Willow Lane was the kind of street that looked perfect in photos. A row of neatly trimmed lawns, identical mailboxes, and polished driveways lined up in military precision. Everyone in the Willow Creek Estates HOA followed the rules. No chipping paint, no garage bands, and definitely no gossip. At least, not openly. But the one house that broke the spell was number 17. It had been empty for 3 years. Overgrown ivy snaked around the wrought iron gate. The windows, always closed, always dusty, reflected nothing. And at night, porch lights from the other homes seemed to bend away from it, as though afraid to shine too close. People whispered about it, of course. It was the only rule the HOA couldn't enforce, the human need to whisper about things they didn't understand. Some said the last owner vanished. Others claimed they still lived inside, unseen. But it wasn't until Ava Patel, a 31-year-old tech analyst from Chicago, moved into number 19, that things began to change. Chapter 2. New Neighbor, Old Secrets. Ava wasn't scared of urban legends. She'd grown up in a city where gunshots were more common than ghost stories. When the realtor told her number 19 was available at below market rate because of neighborhood superstition, she laughed. But that was before the whispering started. The first time she heard it, she thought it was wind, a low murmur around 2 a.m. that made her sit bolt upright in bed. She walked to her window, pulled back the curtain, and stared at the house next door. Nothing. But the sound didn't stop. It was like someone whispering her name. Faint, just outside the range of clarity. Ava. She shook her head, blamed the stress of the move, and went back to sleep. But every night it came back. And by the 4th night, it had a rhythm. Come see me. Chapter 3. The HOA Meeting. Every first Thursday of the month, the HOA held its meeting in the community center, a beige building that looked like a church, but preached about lawn maintenance and fence colors. Ava decided to attend. The room was filled with couples in their 40s and 50s, sipping coffee and exchanging passive-aggressive smiles. She spotted one younger woman, maybe her age, sitting quietly near the back. When the president, Douglas Crane, called the meeting to order, Ava raised her hand. I have a question. About number 17. The room fell into a sudden hush. Douglas's smile barely twitched. We don't discuss that property during meetings. Why not? Because it's unoccupied, he said. And not under HOA jurisdiction until ownership changes. It's technically bank-owned. Nothing to report. Ava frowned. So, no one checks on it? It's been inspected. Officially. He paused. We encourage neighbors not to disturb the property. Later, as people were filing out, the younger woman from the back came up to Ava. You're brave, she said. Ava raised an eyebrow. For asking a question? For asking that question. I'm Lila, by the way. I live in number 21. Do you know what's going on in that house? Lila hesitated. No one really knows. But my brother used to sneak in there when we were kids. Said it felt wrong inside. Said the walls were warm, like skin. Chapter 4. The Night Visitor. The next week, Ava began hearing scratching at her back door. It started around 1 a.m. and ended before 2 o'clock. She tried everything, security cameras, motion lights, even sprinklers. But the cameras would glitch, lights would blink, and the sprinklers would hiss without spraying. The HOA claimed it was weather interference. Ava didn't buy it. One night, she waited in the dark, sitting on her couch, phone in hand, camera ready. At 1:17 a.m., it began, soft at first, then louder. Scratch, scratch, scratch. She crept toward the sliding door, pulled aside the curtain, and saw nothing. Except the back gate to number 17's yard was swinging open. Not in the wind. It was a still night. The moon was high, the trees unmoving. Ava stepped outside. She crossed her patio slowly, barefoot, heart thudding in her ears. She reached the shared hedge line and pushed through. Number 17's backyard was like a grave. Overgrown, silent, suffocating. And then she saw it. A shadow in the upstairs window, staring directly at her. She gasped and stepped back, but the shadow didn't move. It didn't react. It was just watching. Chapter 5. The Journal. The next morning, Ava knocked on Lila's door. "You said your brother used to go into that house. Did he ever mention anything weird?" Lila hesitated, bit her lip. He's not around anymore. Not since last year." "What happened?" "He went missing. Disappeared one night. Police said he probably ran away. But I know he didn't. He was too scared." Ava felt the air turn cold. Scared of what? Lila reached into a drawer and pulled out an old, weather-worn journal. "He used to write in this. About the house." Ava flipped through the pages. Scribbled notes. Diagrams of rooms. Symbols that didn't make sense. One entry was underlined. "There's something in the walls. It whispers. It sees me even when the doors are closed." Another said, "The HOA knows. They always knew. That house was never empty." Chapter 6. Surveillance. That night, Ava placed a new motion camera on her bedroom windowsill, pointed directly at number 17. At 3:03 a.m., her phone buzzed. "Motion detected. Front window, number 17. She opened the feed. The camera showed a flickering image, static, then clear, then static again. And then it captured something impossible. A figure walking through the window, as if the glass didn't exist. Dressed in white, barefoot, with long, limp arms that dragged at its sides. The figure turned and looked directly at the camera. The feed cut to black. Chapter 7. HOA History. Ava spent the next day in the county records office. She requested the history of number 17. What she found was more than strange, it was chilling. The house had changed owners 6 times in 20 years. All 6 either went missing, declared mentally unfit, or died under unusual circumstances. One incident stood out. In 2004, a man named Russell Maynard, former vice president of the HOA, bought the house and moved in with his wife. Within 3 months, his wife was found dead in the attic. Russell was never found. The case was closed as a domestic tragedy. But the report said no signs of forced entry, no murder weapon, and no fingerprints, not even the husband's. Strangest of all, the attending officer wrote in the notes. House interior felt unusually warm, like a heartbeat in the walls. Chapter 8. The Warning. Ava returned to Willow Lane that evening, shaken. Waiting at her doorstep was Douglas Crane, the HOA president. He didn't smile this time. "We need to talk." She folded her arms. "About number 17? He sighed. "You're digging too deep, Miss Patel. You mean asking why a house on a family street is basically haunted?" He leaned closer. "Some questions don't have answers. Or if they do, the answers demand payment." She narrowed her eyes. "Is that a threat?" "No," he said. "It's a warning." He handed her a white envelope. Inside was a photo, grainy, black and white. It showed Ava standing in her backyard. Only, it wasn't taken from her house. It was taken from the upstairs window of number 17. Her blood ran cold. "How?" "It's watching you," Douglas said softly. "And now it's awake again." Ava didn't sleep that night. The photo, taken from within number 17, sat on her coffee table like a curse. She stared at it for hours, turning it over, scanning it for signs of a hoax. But the timestamp, the angle, even the grain matched the images from her own surveillance cam. Someone or something had been watching her from inside that house. By morning, her resolve was forged. No more whispers. No more shadows. She needed answers. She called Lila. "I'm going in tonight." Lila's voice trembled. "Into the house? I need to know what's inside." Silence. "Then, if you go, I'm coming with you." Chapter 10. The Heart of the House. At exactly 11:45 p.m., Ava and Lila stood behind the overgrown hedge that separated their yard from number 17's. Ava had brought a flashlight, her phone, and a kitchen knife. Lila carried pepper spray and her brother's journal. They climbed over the rusted gate into the backyard. Every step into the house's territory felt heavier, as though the soil itself resisted them. The back door was locked, but only barely. A firm shove, and it creaked open. Inside was darkness. Not just lack of light, but a thick, tangible darkness that pressed against their lungs. The smell was something between mold and rot. They stepped in. The walls were stained, pulsing faintly, as if breathing. Lila whispered, "It's like he wrote alive." They made their way through the kitchen and into the living room. The furniture was covered in dusty sheets, and cobwebs hung like curtains. But the center of the room had been cleared recently, swept clean, as though someone had stood there. Suddenly, Ava's flashlight flickered and went out. They froze. In the silence, they heard it, the whispering again. But this time, it was clearer, closer. "She's here. She remembers." Chapter 11. The room upstairs. They bolted up the stairs, footsteps echoing on the wooden steps. Each room upstairs was colder than the last. Then they reached the last door, the attic. Ava turned the knob slowly. It groaned open. The attic was warm, oppressively so. And the walls were covered in hundreds of photographs. All black and white. All showing people who had lived in the house over the decades. Smiling in some, screaming in others. And then Ava saw one that made her gasp. It was her. As a child. Wearing a red dress. Standing in front of a house that looked exactly like number 17. Only older. Lila stepped beside her. "Ava, what's going on?" Ava whispered, "I think I've been here before." Chapter 12. Memory recovered. That night, Ava dreamt in fragments, flashes of images from a past she didn't remember. A woman screaming. A room with red wallpaper. Whispers behind the walls. A man in a gray suit with no eyes. She awoke drenched in sweat. The photo of her as a child burned into her mind. How was she in a house she had no memory of? Had her parents lived here? She called her mother the next morning. "Mom, did we ever live in a place called Willow Lane?" Her mother went quiet. Then, "You were 3. We only lived there for a few months. I never wanted to talk about it again." "Why?" Her mother's voice cracked. "Because you stopped speaking after what happened in that house. For a whole year. We thought you were broken." "What happened?" "There was a man who kept showing up in your drawings. You said he lived in the walls." Ava's hands shook. She had been in number 17 before. Chapter 13. Lila's loss. Lila came over that evening, pale and panicked. "I found something else in my brother's journal," she said. "He left a code. A list of dates. The dates spanned 20 years. Each one matched the disappearance of a homeowner from number 17. Except the final date. Tomorrow." "Why tomorrow?" Ava asked. Lila turned the page. There was one more line in her brother's messy handwriting. "The house takes what it's owed. Every 7 years. The next one will be her." Below, it was a name. Ava Patel. Chapter 14. Douglas's confession. Ava confronted Douglas Crane the next day at the HOA office. "You knew," she said, slamming the journal on his desk. "You've always known." Douglas sighed, eyes tired. "We tried to contain it. The house is older than the neighborhood. Older than the town, maybe." "What is it?" "It's a kind of entity. It feeds on residents. But only the ones it chooses. We learned to stay away. You let people move in. We didn't have a choice. The HOA exists to monitor, not stop it. If we interfere too much, it punishes the whole block." Ava was stunned. "Why me?" Douglas looked at her with something close to pity. "Because you've been marked since childhood. You opened the door once. Now it wants to finish what it started." Chapter 15. The Ritual Room. Determined to end it, Ava returned to number 17 that night alone. She followed the floor plan in the journal. Past the kitchen, under a loose floorboard, she found a trapdoor, leading to a basement no city records mentioned. The air grew thick. The stairs narrow. She descended into darkness. At the bottom was a small circular room. The walls were covered in ancient symbols, drawn in blood. In the center was a chair. And sitting in that chair was a figure, slumped, lifeless, wrapped in white cloth. Ava stepped closer. The figure's face was mummified, but a necklace around its neck was familiar. It was Lila's brother. Suddenly, the room pulsed, and the walls began to whisper. One must stay, for the door to close. Chapter 16. The Deal. Ava realized what the journal had hinted at all along. The house wasn't just haunted. It was a prison for something ancient, and it could only be contained if someone remained inside willingly or not. The reason the house didn't devour everyone was because it chose one soul and fed slowly. Ava heard footsteps behind her. She turned. Douglas Crane stood there, holding something in his hand. I hoped you'd figure it out, he said. He handed her a silver key. This locks the door. But once it's closed, you can't leave. You want me to stay? I'm too old. It won't accept me. But you've been marked since childhood. You were meant for this. Ava stared at the chair, at the body, then at the key. Chapter 17. One must stay. The walls closed in. The whispers grew louder. One must stay, one must stay. Ava took a step back. No, she whispered. Not me. Douglas smiled. Then it'll take someone else. Maybe your friend. Or your mother. That was it. Ava lunged, grabbed the key, and shoved Douglas into the chair. He screamed, but the house reacted instantly. Vines from the walls wrapping around him, pulling him down. Ava shoved the key into the lock. The door slammed shut. The whispering stopped. Silence. Then, a slow, steady heartbeat in the walls. But it wasn't hers. Chapter 18. 1 year later. Willow Lane looked normal again. Number 17 had a new coat of paint. The lawn trimmed. Windows cleaned. It looked alive. Ava had sold her house and left town. No forwarding address. No explanation. But every first Thursday of the month, the HOA still met. And in the corner, a new face joined the meeting. A man in a gray suit, no eyes visible beneath his hat. He didn't speak, just listened. When the meeting ended, he left a note on the table. It read,